Hey guys, Stephanie with AmericanMuscle.com here with these Saleen Lowering Springs for 2015 and up S550 GT Mustangs. We're going to be talking about a few different things with these springs, but mostly we'll talk about what you can expect from these springs in both the performance and looks categories, and we're also going to talk about the install as well. We'll talk more about the install later, but you're looking at a 1 out of 3 wrenches in the difficulty meter. The Saleen Lowering Springs are going to be a good option for those of you out there that are looking for a lowering spring for a daily driven car or a street car that's going to give a little bit more of an aggressive drop. These springs are made for high performance, so they'll work for occasional track use, and they offer one of the largest drops currently, which means that they're going to have a touch of a stiffer ride quality while providing performance and enhancing the looks of the car. These springs offer a drop of 1.5 inches in the front of the car and 1.3 inches in the rear. But like I mentioned before, this is a touch more aggressive than the standard in the world of lowering springs for the S550. Currently, you tend to see that the majority of springs offer a standard 1-inch drop all the way around the car, and the largest drops that you'll find in a spring for the S550 is just over 1 inch. Now these springs offer more than that in the front. And of course, a lowering spring is going to lower the center of gravity to provide some handling improvements, like reducing squat and body rolling corners, and eliminating nosedive under hard braking. A 1.3 to 1.5 inch drop is enough of a drop to eliminate the gap between the tire and the fender, and it's going to leave the car sitting just above the wheels and tires. Now keep in mind that the drop will look a little different depending on your wheel and tire setup. Getting back to the drop on an S550, the majority of springs out there only offer a 1-inch drop. The S550 chassis doesn't need a huge drop to obtain better looks or an improvement in handling. The S550 responds well to what some of the older generation Mustangs would consider a very small change in ride height. Be surprised at how well the S550 chassis responds to just a 1-inch drop in both the functional and looks categories, and these springs are even more aggressive than that. You guys saw the before and afters. And these are going to be compatible with both the factory and aftermarket wheel and tire setups. Now the plus side of the S550 looking so good and responding so well to a little bit of lowering is that you can create a functional low. And by that I mean low enough to look good, but not low enough to cause issues either on the tire or under the car. It's going to leave you with a very streetable car still. The other thing to consider when you're shopping for springs, besides the drop, is the ride quality. These springs do have a performance design, so they're made for street and race applications, but they do it without compromising ride quality, which means that they're a good option for a street car. They don't have a harsh ride quality, but they are a firm spring. When it comes to ride quality, sometimes you can get a rough ride quality when you start lowering the car more, but I wouldn't really say that's the case with these springs. The ride is more stiff, and you do notice more road noise, but other than that, you'll notice the car having less body roll and being more planted overall. Overall, these springs are intended for street and occasional track use, so they do give a stiffer than factory ride quality, but they're made to not be harsh, so still comfortable, but also able to perform when you want them to. As far as price, these springs are going to cost between $200 and $300, which is right where the majority of other springs are falling as well. Of course, there are some springs that are more expensive or even less expensive than that, and of course, springs all across that same price range as well. So the install is going to take about 4 hours. I'm going to call it a solid 1 out of 3 wrenches on the scale because you will need some knowledge to complete this install, so I'd recommend having a knowledgeable helping hand or taking this to a shop for the install if you haven't done this before, especially since it's always a good idea to get an alignment after the install anyways. This install can be done on jack stands if you don't have access to a lift, but as usual, a lift would be your best bet here. You will need a few tools, including a spring compressor, so make sure you have that before the install. Then you need to get down to the spring and strut assembly, so everything like the wheels, brakes, ABS lines will need to be moved out of the way so you can pull the assemblies out of the car. The spring compressor will help you remove the spring from the strut and install the new front springs, which are compressed and installed the same way. The strut assemblies go back the same way they came out, and the install is the same for both sides. The rear is where things are a little bit different, but it's nothing crazy here. Essentially, the IRS subframe will be dropped along with the rear shock mount so you can slide the rear springs out. The new springs can be installed and then the IRS subframe can be bolted back up, and that's about all it's going to take. Like I mentioned earlier, a fresh alignment after the install isn't a bad idea. Wrapping things up here, the Saleen Lowering Springs offer a 1.5 and a 1.3 inch drop in the front and rear respectively, and they're a performance-based spring designed for street and occasional track use. As always, I suggest you check these out more online for yourself, and for all things Mustang, keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.